Welcome to Panther and Cage.
Downtown Melbourne says that it's losing a lot of business since 3 people were shot in the area in early May.
The owner brought up a creative solution to the city council. He hopes it will bring people back. Fox 35's Connor Hansen caught up with him today.
As you can imagine, after any unfortunate events, everybody takes a little bit of a hiccup during that time when people question an area.
Randy Bennett owns the Hurricane Creek Saloon right up the street from where last month's shooting happened. He says he scans everyone's ID who comes in and can compare numbers week to week. Bennett told the Melbourne City Council there were 500 fewer people the week after the shooting, but a $10,000 difference in revenue.
You cannot, basically hold 80 businesses, 30 restaurants, and a family fun environment hostage when a couple weirdos come by and kind of ruin it for everybody for a moment in time.
After opening his water bill and seeing an ad for the local airport, he got the idea to team up with other businesses and create their own flyers. He says they would promote downtown and remind people that it's safe.
Downtown Melbourne is the same fun, family-friendly place that it's always been.
The city says it's on board with the plan and agreed to help out.
Everybody gets their water bill, and we have about 58,000 accounts. It's good to, it gets directly to the consumer, and it kind of builds confidence in our downtown.
Melbourne's mayor says they've already started having more police patrols, brought in security for the downtown parking garage, and plan to bring in more lighting.
Melbourne's safe. We're a law and order community. Unfortunately, things like that happen, but we've beefed up patrols, and we have a lot of measures coming in.
In Melbourne, Connor Hansen, Fox 35 News.
Hello again. Good evening. Welcome to Panther and Cage Community Demands 3.5, or part 2 of our Community Demands 3. This is the conclusion of the Community Demands 3, so let me go ahead and get started because it is quite a bit of information. If you have any contributions or anything, feel free to let me know. I'll try to check and I'm dealing with the kind of a setup where I'm kind of blind right now. I can see the comment section, but sometimes it doesn't filter through on the camera, but it does filter through on the laptop. So I'll try to catch them as soon as possible. I know sometimes there's a lag between 3 different devices. We have feedback, and then I try to eliminate that. But let's go ahead and get started. All right, Panther and Cage is a community-driven live stream that where me and my co-host we speak on a variety of topics, but we speak from a very unique Afrocentric perspective. Okay, and it's always encouraged for the viewers, the viewing audience, to provide real-time feedback within this live stream through your comments. Your comments will contribute to the progressive discussions that we continue to have on a weekly basis or a semi-weekly basis, and they also will reveal tangible solutions as a result. Now, we only ask that those comments, if you do comment, that those comments possess a degree of relevance to the conversation, because we want to keep these difficult, very difficult conversations coherent. Okay. Because a part of our original focus here on Panther and Cage is to expose the negative narratives that continue to perpetuate social and cultural bigotry, specifically in our Brevard County community. We'll continue to explore other communities also. We'll exploit those narratives that suffocate the gullible members of our society. The same kind of narratives that fuel the racially hostile environments. So if this is your first time joining us, these will be difficult conversations. I'm your host, Panther, but I hope that you will be able to participate and enjoy. Now, the introduction video that I just showed was shown because it was highlighting a creative solution to the loss of business that occurred here in downtown Melbourne in the aftermath of a dispute that ended with 3 people being shot early Saturday on May 6th. It appears that that solution was generated by that business owner you saw there in the video, and other business owners that were in downtown Melbourne, and that solution was coupled up with the solution of more of the Melbourne police presence in downtown along with security in the downtown parking garage, and plans to ascertain more lighting. Okay. Now you saw Melbourne Mayor Paul Alfrey. You saw him, state that this is a law and order community. All right, let me go ahead and get started right into it. If you can't hear me or anything, let me know. If there are some audio issues that you're tracking, go ahead and get in the comment section. Let me know. Give me a thumbs up or whatnot if everything is okay. If you can hear and see well. I am seeing something that says the mic is muted, but I believe that is only on the laptop. So if you can hear me clearly or whatever, please let me know. I just wanted to be sure that everything is streaming correctly. All right, so like I said, you saw Mayor Paul Alfrey, should I say Alfred? I don't want to mispronounce his name. Very conscious about that since being over in Afghanistan. So saw that that he said that this was a law and order community, and I wanted everybody to understand because we use this, we talk about this every now and then, and we brush over it and we don't describe it or talk about the actual definition of what it means. So you should really understand what it means. It is defined as strict control of crime and the repression of violence, even at the cost of civil rights. Okay. Now, remember last week I mentioned that significant attention and resources had been dedicated to resolving the issue of some of the gang-related gun violence through a law and order modus. And you heard it there with Mayor Paul Alfrey. Okay. You heard it, him say it out of his mouth himself. And it's not just in Melbourne. Okay, because all of Brevard has been put on notice by the Brevard County Sheriff Wayne Ivey. And he did that back in, I believe it was 2016. I want to keep saying that, but for some reason I'm only tracking it back as far as 2020. But I'm pretty sure he did say that. I do believe in like 2017 or something like that. I believe it was right before he attended one of the Trump rallies. I do believe that was a message. Either it was right before or right after, somewhere around that time. Okay, because I remember President Trump screaming "law and order," saying that he was going to be a law and order president, and I remember that parrot, of that law and order narrative coming from our Brevard County Sheriff. Okay, now I remember he did this also when he introduced the community to I talked about this last week. I mentioned it, the Game Over Task Force. Okay. Now, according to the BrevardSheriff.com, the Game Over Task Force collaborates to utilize resources from the various participating agencies to identify, to monitor, to track, and subsequently apprehend violent offenders during the actual commission of criminal acts. If you listen to what that says, that means that the traditional geographic boundaries, that once upon a time that, impeded local law enforcement, it no longer applies. So if you listen to what it says, it's showing you or telling you that he's going to use every resource available to be able to monitor and track. That should tell you something. And this could be down to the lowest level, down to your text messages or whatever. I'm sure they will have to. There's a certain process before they could actually do that. But know that, like I said a while ago, he ain't playing. Okay. Game Over Task Force. Game Over is an acronym. Okay, and it stands for Gangs and Major Epidemic of Violence Enforcement Response. Okay. Now, the website, the BrevardSheriff.com website, cites that Game Over is a collaborative effort between the Brevard County Sheriff's Office, the Titusville Police Department, the Cocoa Police Department, the Rockledge Police Department, the Melbourne Police Department, Palm Bay Police Department, Florida FDLE, Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and the Brevard/Seminole State Attorney's Office. And it includes federal and state crime and justice partners from various disciplines, such as the United States Attorney's Office, the Florida Department of Corrections, the Parole and Probation, the ATF, the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. You might as well say DEA. He says ATF, but Department of Juvenile Justice was included in that, and then it finally stated the Central Florida's crime line. And that's dang near everybody and their mama when it comes to law enforcement. And I told y'all before, I keep telling you guys that he ain't playing, right? So I just I want all of my, and this is where I'm gonna speak to my black audience, my black fathers, okay? Because I'm a black father, so this is for me to you guys. I want all you black fathers in Brevard to listen to what I said about this task force. You guys can roll back. I'm gonna show you a video in just a second, but where you can see it yourself. But I need for you guys to roll back and watch this video again. Everything I just said again, because I'm not gonna repeat it because I got a lot of time that I gotta fill in, right? So I want you guys to go all the way back, and I want y'all to listen to that again. What I said. This is something that your kids need to know. This is something that and let's just say, okay, black dads, this is something your black sons need to know. They need to understand what this means, because we gloss over things in our society. We move forward, we push forward because there's a certain pathology that's at play when it comes to fathers and sons. And sometimes it's, we as dads want our sons to follow us. And to a certain degree, we want them to live their own lives, but we do want them to follow us until that time where we feel like we're ready for them to let them go and walk into, life with their own will and their own responsibilities about them. So when we talk about this game over task force, we have to understand that they need to understand what this means. This means they can't be playing around, okay? But we'll talk about that a little different, all right? We're gonna address all that. So I'm just gonna get to showing you guys exactly what this game over task force is all about, all right?
Up to try and make a difference here. Take a look at these photos from Titusville Police Department. They shared with us of guns seized over just the last 2 months in crimes involving young people. Police shared that in Melbourne, they've had 94 calls for shots fired just this year. Sheriff Ivey says this is going to be a multifaceted approach, including making arrests and working to flip those people to tell law enforcement who is above them. The Game Over initiative stopped gang violence and doing more community outreach for violence.
I'm going to pin some school resource deputies throughout the summer to try and make sure that we have these men and women that are able to talk to them, that have built relationships with them. We're going to use them in that capacity.
This new task force also involves prosecution. State Attorney Phil Archer says they will look over some cases for federal prosecution, and he's looking to prosecute some youth as adults in these violent crimes.
As I said, you hear that last part? Last line said they're looking to prosecute some youth. Try as they may. I guess I'm starting to get those little trolls. I don't know. People love to call me when I'm online. The last line, getting back serious now, the last line that they stated is that they're looking to prosecute some of the youth as adults for those violent crimes. Okay, and that was a while ago. So they already started that. This is nothing new. I'm not telling anything new. But if you just not figured this out, that's why I said what I said, Black fathers, right? That last line. It means that your children or your young men have no chance to play around with any gang-related activity and come out, with just a slap on the wrist. Now, I understand that there's people out there. I got viewers. I know, and they, talk to me, quite often about, they make claims that there's some evidence that some of these youth do get a slap on the wrist, and I'm not saying they're wrong. All right, I'm just saying, if it's your kid, do you want to take that chance? If you don't understand that, since that last primary election, the message was clear from many of the people who are associated with the justice system, and that was justice system is not hard enough on some of these violent offenders. Okay, the sheriff has said it himself. All right, so they want to get tougher on crime. I've gotten that message since the last general election. All right, so they want to get tougher on crime. And I don't think that's controversial. I don't think anybody, I don't think there are any individuals out there that are saying that I'm making this claim or they disagree with that claim. Okay, they do want to be tougher on crime. All right, so if you got any feedback on that before I move on to the next, next topic or whatnot, go ahead and do it now. But I just want to just reiterate that, especially to the, Black fathers out there, that Game Over Task Force is it's utilizing intelligence, it's utilizing all resources available to them so that they can, so you can't just run to another state. You can't even run, well, you can't run to another city, but you can't even run to another state. Okay. So at that stage of the game, we're talking about these kids that are running around with guns that we saw in the video, whatever. Once ATF gets a hold of that, and then a lot of this stuff is narcotics. So like I said, you might as well say it's a DEA. But given all that information, I'm just trying to let these, especially my Black fathers, know and understand this stuff, that I don't know, it's hard to give other dads a warning. You understand? So let me go ahead, and I do have comments. I do believe one is from my co-host. But this one, we can talk about the Second Amendment probably at another time. Okay, but when we talk about those constitutional rights, that's a big discussion. In fact, we probably should have a conversation on that, but I don't know if we want to have that conversation yet. Everybody opened up with reparations, and it moved immediately to disqualify us for reparations because they want to say that Black on Black crime was the biggest problem, and that Black fathers were at the heart of that, not stepping up and doing what we're supposed to do with our families. So I'm a proud Second Amendment supporter. I mean, that's not any new news to anybody, I'm sure. But the open carry thing, I will say this: I was given some advice or given some knowledge about it, or speaking to someone about it, and it made sense as to one of the reasons why is they didn't want to to bear arms is your constitutional right. And many Americans understand that. So many Floridians didn't feel like, we should have to pay for a license for a right that should already be endowed to us, naturally. So that is probably behind one of the reasons that's moving behind this, open carry law. Did we talk about the open carry law? We did talk about that last week, didn't we? But I think, I think we did talk. Yes, we did talk about that open carry law, because I do have two pictures to show you as the reasons why I was telling some of the Black men out there, don't buy into this law, and just jump in and start practicing it. Go ahead and get your concealed weapons permit. All right, go and get your concealed weapons permit. And my co-host says they need to fix the issue instead of just putting a sloppy ass Band-Aid on it and over it. Yeah. That's one of the things that the Second Amendment crowd will say, and they will, and I'm not saying they're wrong. They will say, and that's the reason why they want to open carry. Well, excuse me, my bad. Hold on. Let's back up. I messed up because I was rolling along looking at all these different devices. It is not an open carry law. Okay. I want to make sure I clarify that with everybody. It is not an open carry law. There will be no open carry in Florida unless there's a new law that passes or whatnot. But right now, there is no open carry at all. Somebody told me that was true. I had an argument with somebody about that. That's not true. It's not open carry. It's permitless carry. Excuse me. That's why it sounded weird. Like, did I talk about this? I talked about permitless carry. That means you don't have to have a concealed weapons permit to carry a firearm. Okay. And that is why they made it not an open carry, but a permitless carry. Make sure we understand that, everybody. Permitless carry. I don't know if I have this on the screen as a banner. I think I took it off. Yeah, I did take it off. But it's a permitless carry. All right. So make sure that we understand that. yeah, it's not something I want, our young African American brothers to be mistaken with, and even you or even exercise the permitless carry. Don't do it. Is there certain rules to it? You have to have your ID on it. So you're no longer walking around without ID, but then walking with your firearm. If you have your firearm, you're going to have your ID, because they're going to ask you to produce this, your ID or whatever. And I think that's one of the requisites for carrying it. So understand that there's some stuff that's slick about it. I do believe that it's going to raise or going to kind of get a heightened sense of I don't want to say profiling, but I do want to say that there's going to be a lot of the let me see your ID going on. And so I don't think you're going to be able to practice one constitutional right without the other now. So there's a very slick way that they can probably do that, but there's a lot of responsibilities to it. All right. So I appreciate that. You guys are hearing me all right? I assume so. All right. Okay, cool. I'm not sure why it's not tracking who this person is on my screen, but I'm sure they're probably in the all right, I'm sure they're in the Let's Talk About It group, probably. In that group, always some reason it doesn't want to filter through the identities of the people who are watching. But that's cool. So let's get back to it. Like I said, that last line in there where they were going to try some adults and whatnot, was in that video was a big issue that I wanted Black fathers to understand. But they were a message which they were going to be going to start getting tougher on crime. Okay, that was back in 2020 when they actually showed that. So it's unclear as far as getting back to this shooting that happened in downtown Melbourne. It's unclear whether the shooting was gang related. It could be, but I haven't intimately followed the case, that particular shooting, to determine if that indeed was, gang related. Okay, so the answer to that may be out there, but I'm not sure. I'm not tracking it. Okay, the possibility is that when you line up the evidence available, like you saw how they did that. The possibility is that it could be gang related. And there's indicators. There's indicators that show that there is, but then keep in mind they are still innocent. So let me get to it and get back on track. According to the Florida Today, there were three males with gunshot injuries that had been brought to Holmes Regional Medical Center, right? And I'm assuming that it's likely due to the treatment protocol that the Melbourne Police Department were called there to the emergency room. And that's where they actually stopped. I don't know, stopped on one side, on the parking garage side or the emergency room side, but they stopped a car which was trying to drop off one of the gunshot or the third gunshot victim. Okay. Now that resulted in two males that were inside of the vehicle. They were trying to evade the police by running on foot. Now both of the men were caught and they were charged with resisting an officer and then arrested. Okay. Now reports stated that the men were not injured and that those men, that their involvement outside of dropping one of the victims off remained unclear at the time that I gathered this information. But that they were, it stated that they were going to intended on continuing to investigate. Okay.
Police say a fight broke out in the street outside of the crowded late-night bars leading to the shooting. News 6's James Barbero has new video capturing the moment shots were fired.
4 gunshots, followed by 2 more, and finally 6 rounds of rapid fire heard on a camera at a downtown Melbourne business. On East New Haven Avenue at 1:23 in the morning Saturday, people were seen running for their lives.
Don't know how we survived all the gunshots that happened that night, but we got lucky.
Like other small businesses, Scott Alex says his store was hit in the gunfire too. Monday, Melbourne police identifying Orlando Green and Deontay Jones as the 2 men police say drove one of the 3 shooting victims to the hospital and then ran from police. According to an arrest affidavit, witnesses told police there was another car that drove victims to the hospital. Police tell us Green and Jones are the only arrests thus far, and they're not shooting suspects. At this point of the active investigation, they're facing resisting charges.
Downtown Melbourne is safe.
Saturday, News 6 interviewed Melbourne's Mayor Paul Alfrey, who says it's time for another conversation about safety downtown, just like the city council had a year ago after police said Alan Noel died in a shooting inside a bar. If convicted, suspect Elvin Clark faces life in prison. The bar off the tracks ultimately closed.
There's been people kind of concerned about this. We will address this at our council meeting on Tuesday night.
When the bars are starting to shut down, maybe have a few police just show their presence.
Now that shooting obviously damaged some windows to a business, as you can see from the video, but it damaged some of the windows to the Black Chevy Suburban, according to Florida Today. And it was also reported in Florida Today that there was a bullet that was lodged in the child car seat that was in the Suburban. I don't know. I just find that weird. When you got babies like that, man, and you got heat on you or something like that, why are you even downtown where somebody can track you down? Let me get back to it because I don't want to get too into my own personal opinion about it because it just don't. Some of that stuff don't make sense. But you can. I wouldn't put my babies in that kind of thing. No way in hell. I'm sorry. I had to say that. So it is in my opinion though that I believe that it appeared to be gang related because the reporting stated that the two men that were arrested, the two men Orlando Green and Deontay Jones, weren't cooperating. I remember that was one of the early lines that I gathered when I first heard about the shooting. Okay, and if you line up that with the TV or the video reporting that like you just saw and others, okay, that was just one channel, but there's others. It kind of plays on an assumption that's associated with the whole snitching narrative. And both Orlando Green and Deontay Jones, I want to state this clearly that they are innocent until proven guilty. But those mug shots and the way they plaster them all over the news, it does play on biases, and that on biases that we have historically had a difficult time dealing with. Now you just saw how they were connecting the violence to a previous incident that was involved in the shooting that happened inside a bar and grill that was called Off the Tracks. All right, and that happened March of last year. Now, Off the Tracks was a bar and grill that was located downtown Melbourne, but it has been closed since September, and apparently now it's been taken over by Lumberjacks Axe House and Sports Bar. So now that that doesn't mean that downtown Melbourne is a violent crime haven, okay? And you obviously see Randy Bennett of the Hurricane Creek Saloon wanted to communicate that message to the community, in that opening video that we showed at the very beginning. Now, keep in mind, look how this works. You shoot in downtown Titusville and, not downtown Titusville, but, in a certain area downtown, in a certain area in Titusville, and it's a crime haven. You shoot in downtown Melbourne and they want to make sure they get out on the media and say, hey, it's not a crime haven, right? So I just want to, everybody to understand or whatever, like kind of watch how the media plays things and how you interpret that media, okay? Now, the point is that the community has expressed demands to end the shootings and the shootings that are associated with gang violence in Brevard County. I get that message loud and clear. I've gotten it since 2 years ago, okay? Thus, the reasoning for last week's topics of discussion, and then why we're concluding that tonight. It's got a lot of information tonight, so this may go long, but I'm gonna try to get through this as quickly as possible, all right? So we're gonna continue to start to talk about all these things because they are associated to the gun violence, okay? Whether you understand it or not, you'll learn. Last week in our Community Demands 3 live stream, we revisited the conceptual demands of the Brevard County community, talking about its particular demands for accountability. And we talked about how I attempted to open the lines of communication about the issues, again, to hear from anyone who was involved or connected with the Brevard County community that wanted to talk about the gang activity and the gun violence, all right? Responsibly have a discussion at that. So, of course, at that time, because I asked a question that really, got close to tangible resolutions, I didn't hear from anybody but one specific community member. I always talk to my co-host. So I'm not counting my co-host in that, but there is one other community member that always talks to me about that. All right. Now let's get to it. That community member specifically spoke to me about the felony point system and that was utilized by the court system and in its processes to decide how the defendant is punished after their conviction. So because of that, we talked about that concept called the score sheet last week. Now, the Florida Criminal Punishment Code score sheet is what it's officially called. I originally had that video with John Guidry of the law offices of John Guidry, and he was speaking on the score sheet. But because of some kind of technical software issues I was having, the video and then the other videos, the original videos that I had, they were removed from the database. Now, in any case, we addressed the score sheet anyway because the community member that wanted me to consider it within the processes before we considered racism being the cause for any sentencing disparities that we covered in Panther and Cage 15 and 16, I believe 16 and 17, but 15 and 16 I know for sure. And I think that was like 4 episodes. But we did those vlogcasts and whatnot. We did cover the sentencing disparities then. So this prompted that community member to be concerned enough to have this conversation with me, and I appreciate it. But I stated that the felony point system was a very premature subject to discuss before we address the culturally insensitive or the culturally sensitive reasons behind the demographic makeup of Brevard County and then the other communities across our nation, right? We want to talk about police brutality and then black on black crime. And we brought up the concept of the recidivism rate again last week because, you know, which let me go ahead and say what the recidivism rate is. I know some people say I say some big words, whatever. That's not a big word. It's just understand what they're saying. This is coded language that they use for us. So when we talk about recidivism rate, the recidivism rate is a rate of measurement of rearrests and reconvictions within a 3-year period following a prisoner or a felon's release from prison. Now, we talked about that. We brought that up. That's going to constantly come back up. So I just want you guys to know what that was. And then we talked about what is called Bridge the Gap Ministry. So let me go ahead and get this on the screen real quick. We talked about the Bridge the Gap Ministry last week. And that was an organization that was hosting an event in Titusville on Saturday, April the 29th. And I addressed the community's concern for the potential fallout of the permitless carry law that we just spoke about. I gave my opinions to my tips as the African-American man regarding to exercising the Constitution's Second Amendment right. And I pointed out that risk as an African-American utilizing certain retention systems that allowed the firearm owner to use within his or her vehicle, okay? And I tried to say that because of today's social climate, all right? Now, before I speak any further, as far as the notes, I want to go ahead and get this on screen to show you what I'm talking about when I say the retention systems that you can utilize in your vehicle, all right? These are the things that, as an African-American male in today's social climate, is a no-no, okay? See that? That's a retention system that's in your vehicle, gives you quick, fast access. Now, that's one of those ones that, you know, I'm pretty sure somebody got that idea from being overseas or whatnot. But that's one that, you know, is a makeshift. You can do that. Anybody can do that. That's pretty ineffective or pretty effective, but inexpensive one to utilize. But the one that I see the most on the internet that I found to be interesting, but I would tell you as an African-American man, you don't have the privilege to do this, is this one. The reason why I say that, I don't want anybody to get all, you know, weird and say, oh, this is, you know, he's telling us wrong. No. I use Philando Castile, Alton Sterling's murders to reiterate the risk of exercising your constitutional Second Amendment right. Black fathers, I should say, or black men, I should say, okay? African-American people need to understand that we don't have that privilege. I don't care. You can debate this with me all you want to. We can get to a Second Amendment discussion right here, right now, and I'll crush you. This is not a privilege that we can exercise, okay? And like I said, in Philando Castile, he had a concealed weapons permit and was just letting Officer Yanez know, you know, what his status was, that I do have a concealed weapons. I have a firearm on me, but I have a concealed weapons permit. And as you know, he had 7 shots in his chest. All right. Well, I think one of them was his head. Either way, 7 shots, point blank range. And he was letting him know that he had a firearm. Alton Sterling. Don't even know if he had a firearm. Don't think he had a firearm. But when they screamed gun, automatically the shots rang out. He ends up dead. If you have a firearm like this in a retention system in your vehicle and you get pulled over and that officer sees it, just because you have quick, easy access, which is what it's meant for, that may not end well, okay? Now you can go watch all the Alton Sterling videos with your hand out the window all you want to or whatever. Regardless of that, if you had a firearm like on this retention system you see right here, you're leaving it to the officer's discretion. I don't think you want to play with that risk. All right. So I'm telling you, just to reiterate, the risk of exercising your constitutional Second Amendment, despite that new permitless carry law that's here in Florida now, but it's going to be enacted next month. I believe that it is in the best interest for Black African Americans here in Brevard County. Okay, I'm just going to limit it to there. It could be national, but I'm just limiting it to Brevard County. All right. I'm going to tell you what this new permitless carry law exercise. It's in your best interest to exercise the right to obtain training and a legal concealed weapons permit to possess a firearm. All right. That's all I'm going to say about that. I don't see any comments or whatever, any new comments. So therefore, dropping that issue. All right. Make sure everything's clear on the screen before we move forward. Now, we also talked about last week, we talked about the Hey Blue Policing in Cocoa Design Thinking Workshop. All right. Now, that event was hosted on May the 2nd, 2023, and we gave the opportunity for the community to come together and focus on building connections. Actually, I didn't give, they gave, okay? They gave that opportunity for the community to come together and focus on building connections between the police in Cocoa and the Cocoa community. I used that as an opportunity here on last week's show to express that, you know, we as the community need to work to form genuine connections with the law enforcement that are working in these areas, because just a connection may not resolve some of the needs of the Black community specifically. And I'll give you examples of that. I'll give you examples of, actually, I'm gonna try to see if I can get right into the part of this. I understand that there are some people out there who disagree with me, okay? And that you're free to do so. You know, let me get this off the screen because I don't want to, I'm not representing Hey Blue as far as, you know, what I'm saying right now, okay? This is me. This is purely me, okay? I understand that there are some people out there who don't like me and don't agree with me, okay? You're free to do that, okay? You're free to stick your head up your own butt if you want to, all right? This is America, and theoretically, it's the land of the free. Now, ironically speaking of but, let me get you here. I know that these connections between the police and the community must be genuine, and they must be, you know, it just must be a genuine connection because of incidents like with Officer Rock Contardi, all right? Those of you who don't know who that is, that's an officer who violated a citizen in Cocoa 4 years ago. 4 years ago today, okay? June 5th, 2019, 4 years ago today. And he violated that citizen by sticking his hand up that suspect's butt. Speaking of butts, right? And he did that in a search right there on the in the corner of Fisk and Peachtree, okay? In the stores, in that corner store, which is a very high volume area. He did it right there in the parking lot. Very busy intersection. Some of that incident, you can it can be seen on YouTube. If the viewing audience is interested and needs to know what I'm referencing, I'm using him as an example, okay? Contardi was terminated after a complaint was submitted by the suspect, by the citizen, and then it was investigated. All right, now let me go ahead and place this link in the comment section because I already know it's a long link, but I'm just going to place that in the section. You guys can look at that at another time, but it'll be there for when I'm done. And you guys can click on it or whatever and start to see. It's a very long video, but you want to pay attention to it. And I seen this thing when it, like very recently, after it actually happened. It was before we started streaming like this on a weekly basis. So let me go ahead and put that in the comment section for you. And this should populate to everywhere, including YouTube. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I am on YouTube. I get no viewers on YouTube, maybe 1 or 2 every now and then. But that is just for replay value, because when I start rearranging some of the database, it will pull off of Facebook. Now I have to upload the videos, but that'll just be to manage some of the space. All right. Now, the reason why I brought up Rock Contardi was because, you know, I stated I was using an example for the worst at the lowest level. One of the reasons why, if you don't have a genuine connection with the community, you know, how that, you know, can leave somebody. But if a genuine connection would have de-escalated that situation and resolved that incident, which that incident started with, oh yeah, it started with him saying, I think your tent's illegal. And it went to them walking up to the car to, I smell weed. The I smell weed accusation, it would have left that innocent man his dignity if there was a genuine connection. If he had known this individual, if he had respected this individual enough, you know what I'm saying, to say, okay, man, if you're going to do this, whatever, then take me back to the station or something like that. You see what I'm saying? I don't know if he, you know, would have had that right, but, you know, have a better discussion. He wasn't hearing that guy if you watch the video, okay? Now, I'll leave the link in the, like I said, I left the link in the comment section for everybody to take a look at that. But, you know, like I said, that police stop started with, your vehicle's window tint looks to be in violation. Then it escalated to, I smell weed. Then it escalated to, we must search your vehicle. And when they searched the vehicle, they found nothing. And then all of a sudden it escalated to even further to, I need to search your person. Okay? I don't even think he asked and said, I need to search a person. But at one point, putting your hand up the guy's butt. We talk about community connections and connection with law enforcement and police and whatnot, or connection with the police in the community. That kind of, you know, hand to butt connection, that ain't cool. All right. I'm just saying, that's just me. All right. Not representing the individuals that, you know, that manage and operate and manage Hey Blue. But get back to Hey Blue Design Thinking Workshop. The Hey Blue Policing and Cocoa Design Thinking Workshop 2, it provided an opportunity for the community to meet with the current law enforcement officers that were seeking to enhance those opportunities, which facilitate the connections within the community. Okay, I spoke on how the attendance was low and how it yielded great change, but the community didn't turn out to the event. Okay, now I spoke with a need to manage the community involvement, you know, better, being the responsibility of the community in that case, and in that case, because we didn't show up. Okay, and I spoke on the need to know as well as to act on those opportunities when they present themselves. Is that, you know, we've been asking for change. There's been a lot of change demanded since 2020, and then when there's an opportunity to, you know, to field out some good resolutions, you know, which some of those resolutions were some good resolutions were put on the table. We gotta, you know, I also talked about us dealing with the interference of communication. On that community level, when we talk about delivering a message, holding responsibility to attend certain events from the community. Then I mainly talked about, I spoke on authenticity. And, you know, we talked about that issue. And then we also talked about an issue that was suicide by concept. And that's a deeper conversation, because we understand that this is a method that is used for individuals to commit suicide. Now, it's a suicide method in which a suicidal individual deliberately behaves in a threatening manner with the intent to provoke a lethal response from the public safety or law enforcement officer just to end their own life. And we need to understand that, you know, that's how bad the culture is when, you know, you could just do something to provoke the officer and they're going to end your life. Okay. So that's something, that's another conversation that we're going to have, but it is definitely relevant to connections within the community. Okay. Now, I wanted to say that somehow, like, we have missed the mark, and that sometimes, you know, or that historically we've given antiquated resolutions in the past, and these have been methods that have driven the whole idea away from actually prevailing over the challenges that, you know, that exist between law enforcement and the community. And I concluded last week's live stream because we ran out of time We quite often do here because there's so much information, and I time it and then it goes out the window. But we're just gonna just pick up right away tonight. All right. So where we left off was hearing the feedback, and this kind of throwing me off for a loop sometimes. Scapegoating. All right. Let me go ahead and get this on the. Some of the racial tensions that were revealed during the summer of 2020 involved the demonization of Black men. And we saw this when we talked about George Floyd, Tamir Rice, Ahmaud Arbery. And I'm sure everybody saw what happened. Some people probably misinterpreted or interpreted a certain way. But what happened when we saw all this, we saw all out dialogue was an assault on Black men, Black fathers, and the Black community. Specifically here in Brevard County, that is exactly what happened. Okay. They used George Floyd and his history. Everybody talked about his criminality or whatever, instead of understanding the act of murdering this man in cold blood. Okay. I know a lot of people miss the whole point of the criminalization of Ahmaud Arbery when he was, in the site. Everyone said it was against the law. Everybody turned into lawyers all of a sudden, right? So what we're seeing is what we've seen is just, we're still seeing the, the tail end of a trend, right? And no one can avoid the truth about this, because our community, our specific community, began having conversations and public discussions about reparations. You could never get anybody to have a discussion about reparations until the George Floyd issue came up. And that's when it all started. And that's how it started our platform. And while we're discussing these issues we're talking about tonight. Now, our Brevard County community, they began having discussions that were disparaging to Black men. That is a fact. And we saw Black fathers being accused of not taking responsibility. And that was the unequivocal catalyst for the violence that was occurring in our Black community here in Brevard County. Now, regardless to it being considered Black on Black crime or Black on white crime, we saw detrimental discussions and downright insults that everybody was, not everybody, but everybody within that Let's Talk About It group pretty much was participating in, okay? And we stepped in, myself and my co-host, and we declared that shall stop, okay? Now, I did that then because I recognized that this was more than just a trendy way of scapegoating. Okay, the Black man seemed to be the reason for all the problems over the course of that 2 or 3 weeks, or whatever, they were having discussions. Okay, and I recognized that as scapegoating. I had to explain to somebody else a few weeks ago about their psychological denial via the projecting responsibility and blaming Black men and or the Black father for everything that goes wrong. All right. Now, this was not only was this a cultural problem that was exacerbated by chattel slavery, and I wanted to show an image of that. There is an image that I notice it keeps disappearing, but it's been out there for a couple of years, and it is of a woman that appears to have her clothes misheveled. Basically, it looks like she may have been raped, and she's a Black woman, and it seems to be set in slave times. I do believe there's shackles around her wrist. But she's holding her dress up as if she had been raped, and she's pointing off to the distance. And then you're looking at the Black man who's sitting there with shackles on, and he's just sitting there like, and it honestly, it paints a huge picture. It points a huge picture. I can't fix it. It paints a huge picture that the Black man at that moment, what can he do about it? Outside of just sacrificing himself. Now, does it say whether he, picture doesn't show whether he went and did something about it, whether he stayed and didn't do anything about it, or the discussion, but just the moment that picture was communicating was powerful. Okay, and that's what I mean when I say it's a cultural problem that was exacerbated by chattel slavery. Okay, and it's festered its way even up into feminism, which today in today's general Western culture, because there exists an interest to escape guilt and negative feelings. people want to cast a shadow and the blame on Black men just to relieve themselves of the weight of accountability. Okay, that's why that happened. I stated that to that person I was having a discussion with, and it was apparent that she enjoyed blaming Black men for the community's biggest problems. And the world is watching, and as a result, they see this displeasure that Black women, that you as a Black woman have towards us, and this need to defend yourself by scapegoating Black men for society's greatest problems is actually a very passive-aggressive trait. It's a passive-aggressive behavior that plants the seeds of disrespect in the potential nuclear Black family structure. We had a discussion about the Black family structure, the nuclear Black family structure, back when Tyree Nichols was murdered, and Jason Whitlock got on, and he and another lady, I forgot her name. She's not important. They got on. They were just destroying Black men, and she was destroying Black women because she stated that they were ratchet, and she had her opinions, and she had a right to her opinions. But you have to understand that when you do this, you are indeed, like I said, planting the seeds of disrespect into the Black nuclear family structure. And many times it's casually accepted that Black, that is as if, okay, the concept that Black men are exclusively residing in full power of decision making and in full authority, which in turn directly affects the micro and the macroeconomic decisions that create all of our society's dysfunctions. Let me say that again, because I know that's probably difficult. It's normalized that Black men are exclusively residing in full power of decision making and authority, in which directly affects the micro and macroeconomic decisions that create all of our society's dysfunctions. But the reality is that Black men aren't exclusively wielding power to even practice group economics historically within the traditional Black nuclear family structure. Okay, that's another conversation. We're talking about the whole "I don't need a man" conversation or whatever. We're not going to get into that. I just wanted to address this is scapegoating. This is done on a national level. This is done at the local level. This is done so often that you don't notice it. Okay, big issue here. All right. To give you an idea of what proof of that, if anyone knows Shirazad Ali, you'll understand, you'll know that this is very old. And that tells you even back in the early 70s, or not early 70s, but the late 70s, this started then. Okay. This started then. Let me go and get this off this banner off the screen so that we can check the comments real quick before I read what she states. This is my co-host here. It says, historically, Black people have been used to explain away all of the ills of America. This is true, King. Even though Black people didn't send the jobs to China. No, we did not outsource. Black people didn't make our housings overpriced. No, we did not. We don't cause inflation. Not that I'm aware of. Okay, there's an article that just came out. It talked about we're 70%, unemployed, under rather than other than white people. But we'll talk about that later. Okay. Now it says, and we didn't murder each other statistically. So really, why are their eyes, on us so much? Again, the scapegoat. Excellent comment, King. As always, you're on point. But Shirazad Ali says, the Black race is the only race where society views the woman as the backbone of the family. There's a reason for that. Okay. That is an insult to our men, and has always been an insult to our men. Black women need to become more warrior-like and start defending our men and our children. I don't even believe that Black women should become more warrior-like, but just I try to teach my daughter there's power in femininity, and it's something that I know that I've been harping on her about, and we talk about this quite often. So as Black fathers, I can tell you, there is a discussion that we do need to have with our daughters, and we need to let these women, let these little girls in training to be women and trained to be, I won't say queens, but we are definitely trained to be queens, because there's the whole point of, not that we're not trained to be queens, it's just that oftentimes we interchange queen with independent. And that's where we get into the problems. So as a Black father, speaking to my daughter, I do have to teach her the power of femininity so that she doesn't, express herself and become so masculine that, no man is willing to deal with her. I mean, those are some of the facts. So either way, it's an issue that we need to talk about in our community. It's an interracial or an internal issue that we need to have amongst ourselves, Black men and Black women, and understand that it's detrimental to resolving any of the systemic issues that we're facing as a community. And the only way that we're going to fix that dysfunction is through a collective effort to where our values or to where we value mutual respect. Okay. I don't see any other comments. So, but yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that. Okay. Now, examples of the ideas that I was talking about earlier, jumping back to the Hey Blue and the connections, and when I was talking about the lowest level rock Cantardi, being an example of just an interaction or a connection with the community, and not, an actual genuine connection, not humanizing this individual, whatnot, not stripping him of his rights, but an example of the one of the other ideas that I was talking about, and why I kept saying historical tensions, and why I kept saying that, there's some issues that we need to build a better relationship. Back in 2016, former Florida Sheriff of Escambia County, David Morgan, gave the Black community his advice on how the Black community should be described, or how they should describe themselves, and how that Black community should behave. And he said, and I'm gonna give you a quote, because you go to PolitiFact, it says that he didn't say that. Yes, he did. You have to understand what he said. He said, first off, let me take issue with the title of African American. He began his speech like that, okay? He said, you're not African American. You're American. We're Americans. I shouldn't have to explain how egregious that was, right? And Sheriff Morgan at the time stated that the problem isn't racism. He said it's not racism, and that most of the issues in the Black community are just perceived. Now, he insinuated by saying it's just perceived. He insinuated the problems weren't real in our community, right? In the Black community, at least in the Black community in Escambia County, I hold him responsible to that, right? Now, with the exception of the acceptance of thug culture among Blacks, is something that he said too. We can kind of see that, who wants a connection with a sheriff that has a perspective or a point of view like that? It ain't working like that here on Panther and Cage. Ain't no I agree to disagree. Nah, that's bull. That's straight up bull. And I'm gonna tell you, as an African American person in this within this community or whatever, never accept that from anybody that's in a position or whatever of authority. If they're in a position of authority, they probably had the education to get there, right? So they should be educated enough to know not to be saying stuff like, oh, racism doesn't exist because you guys got Barack Obama. Now, keep in mind, this is Sheriff David Morgan. He's a former Air Force. So that tells you right there, if you're in the military, this is what you probably faced. And as a soldier, you don't complain. You just take it and drive on. But that's telling you right there or whatever, what you may be dealing with, We're only Americans since 1965 as the signing of the Civil Rights Act, and that is debatable. Yes, it is quite debatable. I'm glad you brought that point out for everybody to see. I'm going to go ahead and put a link to where you can go on YouTube or whatever and find this video and listen to him yourself. It's put together, and it's put together on a very weird site. I guess the site is for Hispanic LGBTQ is what, I believe PolitiFact was stated or whatnot. But if you're not familiar with Escambia County, that's like up there in Pensacola, here in Pensacola, Florida. So I just want y'all to understand. And this is, and listen, here's the thing. He's not the sheriff anymore. That was a while ago, okay? Like I said, 2016. But it is a new sheriff in there. His name is Sheriff Chip Simmons, and he's supposed to be the current sheriff of Escambia County. But I just wanted to say, look him up. You'll find it's very interesting. I guess he ordered a statue for himself. or he ordered it for a memorial or whatnot, but it was a statue of himself or whatever. And Sheriff Chip Simmons had an issue or whatever. He was all on the floor today about it. But just this guy, Sheriff David Morgan, was a piece of work. Take a look at the video when you get a chance, whatever, and listen to what he says, and then you'll understand like how disconnected that individual is. And yet, when you're pushing the agenda or pushing the initiative to make a connection, we have to make sure that's a genuine connection, and we have to make sure that before I connect with somebody, whatever, that they understand at least the basics. Okay, don't tell me that Barack Obama's reparations. Okay, there's a whole conversation we can have about that. We talk about how, like, you guys talk about it was, a fraud election or whatever and stuff, whatever. And then you turn around and say you actually gave us Obama. What does that say? There's levels to this conversation that you don't want to have with me, all right? Anyway, that was scapegoating. And I just want to be able to say that that was one of the issues that we have in our community, that we definitely need to yield on. Every Black leader talking about the personal responsibility behavior, and behavior was killed. Yeah, Fred Hampton, especially Medgar Evers. One day I'm going to do one on Medgar Evers, and I'll try to redo another one on Harry T. Moore. But Dr. King and Brother X all talked about what conservatives are trying to shame, Black Americans with today. Shouldn't murdered our teachers. Yeah. That's part of that paradigm we were talking about previously before. How, like, they take away certain resources and then tell us how to live. And there's a video I want to show, but I don't think we have time tonight because we're already at an hour. But I'm just going to be real with you guys. I'm going to tell you this as part of the community conversation. When you tell, or when you assume or have these expectations that Black people are supposed to behave this way and that way, would have understand that the reason why we're where we are now is because of land grabs, theft. You guys stole, and I would say you guys because then it makes you feel guilty, whatever. Your ancestors stole land and appropriated it for themselves, and that's something that we don't talk about because we didn't want to. There were two directions we could go with these conversations, and you like this direction compared to the other direction. The other choice was to talk about the Reconstruction era, specifically talk about the massacres that happened and the results of those massacres, and then you'll end up to see where we are. But I don't want to play into the whole narrative that you love to use, the negative narrative that that Black people play the victim mentality, right? So we do talk about certain achievements, but it's not fully achievements. You can get that at every other channel. You can go to Erica Lashai. You can go to Levert the Baseman. You can go to Consciously. You can go to all these other individuals, whatever, and they're going to give you Black achievement. Okay, they're going to give you all that positivity. You got it. You don't, if you want that, go to them. You want to talk about these real issues because, like I said, Erica Lashai talked about, she said she had a live stream where she talked about, she said, no one ever talks about deindustrialization. This is what we're going to talk about. This is what we're going to talk about it. Okay. This is where it's going to be talked about. That's an important issue, deindustrialization. So we talk about jobs, and we're going to get to that in tonight's stream too. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. Now, over the years of us streaming, and like clockwork, some people ask me some very pertinent questions as to the community's demands, and that people in our community were making demands. And I said before about 2 weeks past, 2 weeks ago, whatever, that that only one person responded in my DMs. Okay, the few who responded publicly, I thank you all for your contributions to those questions that I submitted. I thank you for being brave enough to stay involved in the conversation and contributing to tangible solutions. And those solutions are sorry for that. It's supposed to be quick on cue. Those questions are not solutions, but those questions are: who should be dictating what the message for Black America should be? All right, that was one of the first questions. Okay, Didn't get a lot of feedback on it, but I did get enough for one answer, right? And the answer was non-acquiescing Black people. Okay, I agree with that. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Reason why? Give me time to read what an unapologetic Black man is, okay? Or being what is called being unapologetically Black. This is why, okay? I'm gonna go ahead and put this on the screen so you guys can see it, okay? A proud man doesn't eat rotting meat even when he's hungry, nor does he steal water from another's well when he thirsts. Keep that in mind. I want you to keep that in mind.
Peace. Whenever I see Black folk on this app sharing their experience with racism, and they lead with an apologetic preface, something like, "This isn't my usual content," or "I'm not usually the type to talk about racism," some mealy-mouthed disclaimer, it always makes me wonder, who y'all talking to? Surely you're not talking to Black folk, because we already know what it is. Racists don't care if you're apologetic or not, and folk who ain't racist don't need you to apologize. So who you talking to? Is it possible that you're actually externalizing an internal dialogue that you're having with yourself, because you are now being forced to acknowledge the existence of a thing that you have downplayed in order to attract your white following? And now you want to be able to tell the truth while holding on to the benefits of the lie. Except that your apology placates the prejudice and perpetuates the privileges of the people to whom you're preaching. You are still upholding white supremacy, whether you're licking boots or Birkenstocks. Because if your white followers unfollow you for telling your Black truth, they were never your followers. You are following them.
Non-acquiescing Black people will control the conversation. Non-acquiescing Black people will be the ones who dictate the message of the Black community, okay? I said before that there are people who are unqualified to have the conversation, having the conversation, and we taking it back, okay? Get you with a revolver ocelot. We're taking it back, all right? But let's get something straight. Let's be real. Probably one of the realest moments you're gonna find here on this from me. It's gonna be here. Let's get something straight. Being unapologetically Black means that being a Black person who is proud of your heritage, proud of your melanin, and proud of your people to the point that you never need to apologize to anyone for that, even if it makes other people uncomfortable, okay? It means that never having to be ashamed of your people or what has happened to your people, and always fighting for more than just equality. It means fighting against white supremacy for equal representation, fighting to end disrespectful displays of cultural appropriation, and continuing to learn about your people and yourself as you experience a journey of figuring out what it means to be Black. Let me be clear. Let me be clear, everybody. I don't owe any other community an apology for being Black and addressing the specific needs of the Black community, okay? If you feel hurt or offended, or take, I want you to take some consideration that I am specifically aware of other members in other communities' level of thought about our issues. And historically, they have been superficial at best, okay? And the reason why that is because some of those communities have the privilege of not having to worry about some of the kinds of issues that impact our community, that impact us, okay? In fact, it is important that the members of those communities understand that those issues were never even designed to impact you. It was never designed to impact them. So they can't even understand how we're able to understand what we're up against, okay? Truthfully, the last portion of that last statement I just said, it isn't unequivocally true. If we truly understand, let's get this right, if we truly understand that The other communities that identify as communities of color received their rights in this country because of us, okay? Because of the Black community's civil rights struggle, rights were afforded to other communities of color, all right? This is fact. And then those same communities, what's crazy about it is those same communities that join in on the idea of socially perpetuating the concept of Black inferiority. As soon as they get their rights, they jump right back on that, right? They get on the idea that the Black community is just supposed to be dumb and just sit back and let it happen. And I'm willing to bet that's 40% of the reason why many people, when they criticize Black people when dealing with like law enforcement or having that connection, you know, that negative connection or whatever with law enforcement or that incident, they're always telling us to just comply. And they're telling us to just comply with police brutality. Think about that. You don't do that when it's a white American, okay? You don't do that. So if you understand that truth, you want to stand in that truth or whatever, okay, let's be unapologetically Black, right? And I'm going to tell you, our ways cannot be their ways, okay? Because our positions are different and juxtaposed to the intent of the way the law tends to work in our society. It's important for me to express that because somehow, some way, we trying to get back to the right before I put it back on the screen. All right. Getting back to the questions now that being unapologetically Black has been addressed. I don't feel like I have to ever speak about that again. It's just what it is, all right? Now, we can return back to the community questions. Now, members of the Black community of Brevard County, what is our role? Members of the Black community of Brevard County, what is our part as the community? What are we responsible for? All these are open questions for you to go ahead and submit your comments or whatnot. At any time, go ahead and bring that information to me. You can message me by DM. Everybody's always messaging me when I'm not asking you for questions, but then when I ask for questions, it gets mighty quiet. So we get to who should be engaging and what should we be specifically asking for? What tangible effort must be immediately made for self-actualization? And we're going to talk about self-actualization in a little bit. I just want to be able to go ahead and say those were the first set of questions that we did address. All right, getting a little delay. Do we want to hear about law enforcement efforts that go beyond the limited scope of their responsibility and have a direct impact to the Black community? That is something that I know that I wanted to talk to a particular member of our community about. We did express this at the Hey Blue Policing in Cocoa event that we do want to hear about this. I did not know that there are sometimes they are spotlighted. Someone sent me a link that had not Florida Today, but the Space Coast Daily, where they highlighted an individual who saw a lady who got released from the hospital. And I can't remember his name right now. And I was supposed to write that down, but I didn't get home in time. I actually streamed later than I wanted to. But he, as a law enforcement officer, he went ahead and got her a hotel room. She needed it. I guess it was raining and she was in a wheelchair on Garden Street. And so he took money out of his own pocket to try to help this young lady or older lady potentially. But that was highlighted in the Space Coast Daily. I didn't read it, but you know, it just went in one ear, out the other for a moment because I had so many other things that was on my mind. I was actually looking at a lecture this morning and looking at some stuff last night. But I will get to that point of hopefully you guys respond to that and tell me if you guys want to hear about that when, you know, they have a direct impact to the Black community as well. Okay, so I know Space Coast Daily is doing it. That means that Every News Today needs to do it. You know, especially I can tell you I got pulled over recently or whatever by a Black officer in Rockledge, and it went the way it should. He didn't ask me where you headed tonight. He didn't get it all extra with me or anything like that. It happened just exactly, and then he was gone. I did his job, and he was gone. You know, my son turned to me and said, "Dad, that was fast. I didn't even see where he went. He disappeared." I'm like, "That's exactly how it should go. None of that extra stuff. Where you headed to tonight and all that? Nah. Just do your job. Just do your job." Now, what kind of community event would the community feel comfortable attending? That is something directly from John Birdie, and he asked that question, and no one's answering that. Now, you guys are always in my inbox trying to tell me something, trying to convince me to vote Republican and everything else. When they ask you something like this, what kind of community event would you, as a member of the community, feel comfortable attending? I get crickets. So we got to stop that. All right. What leadership concepts or leadership theories would be the most effective for Brevard County? We asked that question way back in Community Demands 1. That was like one of the first times we actually entertained all these questions that we were getting. All right. Which leadership style do you believe is needed the most? Those are opinions. You can't even get that wrong. But you want to get in my inbox and tell me that I should look at the horrible, Joe Biden, what he's doing. It ain't. Got no time for that crazy conversation. I don't do bipartisan politics or whatever like that. Not like you think I do. What do you believe we should demand from the Brevard County community leadership? All right. What leadership concepts and theories would be the most effective for positively influencing the Brevard County African American youth? Very important question. Okay, I know people that know the answer to that. They won't talk about it. They won't get on this live stream, and that's cool. That's cool. Karma gonna get you. What leadership concept would help the African American youth become more morally responsible? Okay, very important one. All right. What are the solutions regarding aspirations to assisting the growth and success of Black businesses in Brevard? Very important one there. All right. I need to get some answers back to these or whatever. You don't ask these community demands, I'm not gonna be answering all them other questions that you be throwing at me with a bunch of with you see what I'm saying? I'm not gonna be doing it. What vehicles within Brevard County would make the most significant difference against gun violence? These should be answered tonight. These should be answered tonight. Which leader in Brevard County do you believe has the most effective approach to reducing gun violence in Brevard County? I'm not going to give you my opinion until you give me yours, okay? What is successful in influencing Brevard's African-American youth to end gun violence? What has been successful and what you feel is successful it's okay. You can fill in the blank, okay? What are your opinions regarding the direction and the leadership methodologies that you believe should be prioritized in Brevard County? Simple. And finally, the last one is, how do drugs get in our community, in our Brevard County community? I know that one's not going to be answered, but it was asked to me, so it was one of the demands. I don't know what anybody would ever say how that is. I have my ideas. I'm not law enforcement, so therefore I'm not getting paid to submit that. But I can tell you that's not being brought in by my people. I'll just say that. That's how much I know. I'm a little more than that, but I'm just going to say that. All right. Now, tonight, I'm going to pose another question. All right. We get to the important reasons why we're here. I want to pose that as another question. Matter of fact, let me flat out. What truly drives our motivation? Okay. It's a legitimate question, which I can give each other. If we answer this, it can give each other insight about ourselves. It can give us insight into the true motivations behind some of the behaviors of media pundits versus some of the real grassroots activists. And then it can reveal that the community, what the community actually needs versus what's coming out of the mouths of those grassroots activists. This question is important because the current strategy of the media they're currently on the way, they just started a few weeks ago, is that they want to rebrand the messages that were coming from the Black community. That's why I asked that very first question of who should be crafting the message for the African American community. Okay, they're trying to change the message. They're onto a strategy. We can see these laws and these bills being passed as a part of that strategy. Okay, and that's on both sides. Even the Democrats have rebranded their message, and they're trying to lean more away from the LGBTQ community and what they define as woke. Right now, a realization, all right, of what motivates you helps you heal. It helps you to reveal the path to self-actualization. Okay. Got to get this off the screen first, and then we'll get this. Here's where it comes in, right? Very important concept. Right. Psychologists develop theories of individual human needs and motivations, but none were as popular as Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Okay. Very simple concept. We're going to talk about this, but there's a story behind it. I don't think we should, for time purposes, I don't think we should go into it, but I can tell you that this was incepted in 1943, rebranded in 1954 by a particular guy. We'll cover the details of that at another time if you guys want to know. If you want to know the answer to that, I'll post it in the comment section later so that you have that information or whatnot. But there was some shifting that went on. When it was first introduced, it wasn't a pyramid. Then it became a pyramid later. So all that data I do need that, or you want to talk about that. But this model with the pyramid was the one of the most popular. Okay, it's been expounded upon later too, because you'll see the new ones if you Google it now. But if you look that up now, you'll see that it has concepts on there at the top of this pyramid that say cognitive and aesthetic. Okay, there are cognitive and aesthetic needs, and that's because Maslow's belief had evolved into something that he called self-transcendence, and that replaced self-actualization. Okay, but cognitive and aesthetic needs they're definitely relevant for the purposes of applying these to the collective Black community. But since those are going to be a little bit newer, we'll elect to use this more popular 1954 model for right now, right? Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, a pyramid, it functions in a manner where individuals must satisfy the basic need at the lower level of the pyramid before moving up to higher level growth needs. And once these needs have been satisfied, an individual may move up the pyramid to the highest level, known as self-actualization. Self-actualization means to fully realize your potential, one's potential, whether collectively or individually. Self-actualization means the realization or the fulfillment of one's talent or their potentialities, especially considered as a drive or motivation or a need to present or need present that's in everyone, provided that they have adequate access to the just environment. Now, here's the thing. Why are you trying to find, man? No, you see me online. Probably an emergency too. But, let me go ahead. I'm trying to get this to where it doesn't scroll, where it's just sitting on the screen for you so you can see it. Self-actualization is achievable provided that the person has adequate access to the just environment. Now, I think you guys can understand where I'm going with this. The key words to be said, noting that self-actualization is at the highest level of the psychological development. The realization is more of a mental process or a mental success. Because we know that as a man thinketh, so is he. This means that the body will soon follow the mind. So where the potential becomes, through manifestation, tangible. All right. Now, keep in mind, the key word on the screen is provided that they have adequate access to a just environment. All right. Self-actualization is possible, but they have to have adequate access to a just environment. I think I beat that one enough. Well, you guys understand that, okay? Oh, I didn't see the comment there. See what I'm saying? Like John Verdi made a comment, and for some reason, well, let me reach it. So I don't know when that was actually said, just a few moments ago, but the time. Why is that still on the screen? That's weird. Yeah, I was sharing some of my opinions. Sorry, I missed that. Sometimes it doesn't show up on the screen until later, and then I have to try to backtrack and figure out like where are we all at. Anyway, it was okay for me to take a moment there anyway because I was supposed to explain the manifestation into the physical realm, and that's I don't want to get into any psychic mumbo jumbo, whatever. I want to actually talk about, thinking about things and then it manifesting. So, there's a scripture that says, as a man thinketh, so is he. And what that means is that when you think about something, when you hold these certain ideas in your head, soon your body will follow. This is why a lot of people talk about, keeping your mind oriented to the positive. There are only so many people who are called to actually talk about issues like this that can actually talk about these issues and they'll still smile and go out the door the next day or whatever and deal with some things. Some people can handle the tough conversations. Some people can't. Okay. So keep in mind, I don't want to always seem negative. It's just that, when asked to resolve some problems that our community, that are real in our community, real to us, David Morgan, it requires us to talk about some of these concepts and some of these negative issues. All right. Now, getting back to what we're seeing on the screen, Maslow held preconditions for his hierarchy of needs for it to work. Now, freedom to speak, to express oneself, to live in societies with fairness and justice, they were all required. Censorship, dishonesty, inability to pursue truth and the wisdom, inability to pursue truth and wisdom work against us. However, there are exceptions where people rise above the circumstances. And that's why I just brought up the comment. Like I said, there are certain people who are called to talk about some of these negative things. And that's different. Okay. Or another conversation, I should say. I don't want to get too far off base. All individuals are capable and possess the desire to move up the hierarchy towards self-actualization. All right. They're all capable and possess the desire to. However, initially, Maslow did not perceive his hierarchy to be locked into the function that was explained. Well, I didn't explain that function earlier. That's another function, but it was, where you can, once you move up, you stay up. Okay. That's how some people are interpreting. We're going to look at the 1954 model. Maslow is clear that individuals are often derailed by stronger forces of basic needs. And there is definitely a possibility for an individual to go up or back and forth within this hierarchy. And Maslow understood that the potentiality for an individual to seek multiple needs simultaneously was expected, and that the people that held the potential to satisfy only part of their needs before they chose to seek out other needs that are on a higher level. The key word there was choice. Okay. Now we talk about this very often. We talk about personal responsibility and all that whole narrative, right? Understand that this is where that comes in. This is why we're addressing that. Now, Maslow believed that a loss of a job, a significant change in financial circumstances, relocation, a divorce, an illness, a death in the family, it all could interrupt an individual's journey in the hierarchy of needs. Unfortunately, this causes the individual to fluctuate between levels of hierarchy. And it was Maslow's belief that 1 in 100 people reach only 1 in 100 people reach self-actualization because society rewards motivation primarily based on esteem, love, and other social needs. Applying the functions where individuals must satisfy the basic needs at the lower level of the pyramid before moving up to higher level growth needs, we can see that an example here of why there was civil unrest in the mid 2020. Okay, now the tensions were already high. Okay, and the needs were already perceived to be scarce at that time. So when the murder of George Floyd sparked the protest, the people of society then made demands. They were requesting all these basic needs, and they were worried about, everything on that fourth tier that you now see highlighted there. Okay, because of all the political counter messages, the petty murder of George Floyd and others, the people perceived a denial of respect. Okay, and they realized that what they would define as self-actualization wasn't an option left on the table now, right? And at the risk of security, okay, at the risk of losing their employment, at the risk of destruction of resources, the protests of the summer of 2020 then upset society. All right. Now I want to elaborate here that Brevard County's, particularly Brevard County's protests, were being peaceful, and they didn't involve mass destruction of city or county property, as far as what we were told. Right now, I just wanted to explain that the murders and the harassment was already occurring prior to the time of George Floyd's murder, even in our community. Okay, and that since those were happening, like I said, it set up the setting for that. Because of that, this is where we came in and we started streaming, and I was trying to let people know about Black unity and what these were. The protests it was just one of the vehicles that was used to give the community a voice. Okay, that's why people were protesting. They saw that very top of the pyramid there. You see it with where self-actualization was there. That was then taken off the table because the message, the national message that was being pushed out. Because of that, people decided that they would take to the streets at risk of security, employment, etc., and protest. All right. Now, keep in mind, there were Black grassroots political activists who started to defund the police message. And of course, it was hijacked, kind of like woke and what was the other, CRT, which, there's a difference between Black history and CRT. But they hijacked those words and then changed them up to try to demonize them. This is a simple strategy that they've been employing since the beginning. So the word woke, like I said, I've been talking with a friend of mine. This word has been around since the mid 50s. And all of a sudden now it's like everybody just all of a sudden heard of it yesterday, and now they're demonizing it. So the defund the police message came from Black grassroots. And the only reason why it was captured in the national conversation was because the national media and the white media, okay, had to acknowledge the new Black media. And this is where the messages, the defund the police message came from. This was why it was tied in with the protests, and everybody's acting like it just came out of nowhere. This is because the stage was already exacerbated. Racism was already, there. A lot of the issues were already there. And once, George Floyd murder hit and we saw 8-9 minutes, whatever, of a murder, blatantly, like right there in front of everybody, it hit home for a lot of people. Especially when they were screaming, get off him. And then you had the other 4 officers that were just standing there all watching it go down. And I think I said something before to somebody else, but it was a little different. But anyway, if this was a lynching, you want to know how like those lynchings happened in the past and everybody was taking pictures of it and everything? This is how it would have happened. People would have stood by and watched it, watched a human lose their life. And that's what sparked a lot of this. That's what, took away the self-actualization. Now, without security, without resources, without employment, social economic opportunity, etc., it is impossible to reach the next tier containing a sense of love and belonging. And this is where some of the problems arise in our community. Our community's critics complain about crime, and specifically the crime that is within the Black community. Our community's critics don't care about the crime in their community, okay? Even though someone in their community is taking another community member out to an abandoned lot and shoot them in the head and then burn the remains, that's not a concern. Talking about a murder that just happened over here in Palm Bay or whatever at the compound, you know? And I know it was a concern, but, you know, not a concern to those community members that, you know what I mean, okay? I don't want to get into it and call people racist or whatever. I'm just saying these individuals aren't concerned about that. That doesn't enrage them. It's when they see a Black person or whatever that, you know, got arrested on some gun charges or whatever, and then they proceed to start calling them names and everything else, right? POS is the main one I see a lot, though. That's a little bit better than, you know, what it got before, because it was a lot of racist stuff that was being said. But because someone shooting their mother in the head while she was visiting him from out of town didn't draw the ire from the community, as the two kids who were trying to drive back into their grandmother's driveway got stopped, you know, and the deputy, you know, didn't have his lights on, you know, that drew more ire than somebody killing their own mom, right? Because the Cocoa police officer pointing and shooting and yelling that he was going to kill, why did I say Cocoa police? That was the Brevard County Sheriff deputy, excuse me, that deputy was pointing and yelling that he was going to kill, you know, oh, no, yeah, that's right. I forgot it. I suppose David Ruiz. That incident happened. But what I was trying to think of his name, Kelly is his name. What's the Cocoa police officer that was doing a shootout with the Brevard County Sheriff's Department there in Vieira? That standoff got so much sympathy. It got sympathy, empathy, and all this uplifting support from the community members, right? And then I talk about David Ruiz, right? David Ruiz got in a shootout with the same not the same deputies, but the same, you know, department, the same Brevard County Sheriff's Department. But what did Wayne Ivey say? Point a gun at my deputies, you go home in a box. So tell me why Mr. Kelly didn't go home in a box. Patrick Kelly was his name. See what I'm saying? I don't think he said go home in a box. He said you're going home to the morgue in a body bag, right? I think that's what I have in my notes. You're going home. You're going to the morgue in a body bag is what he said. Let me be correct, because I don't want to defame him and say something that he didn't say. He said if you're going to point a gun at his deputies, you're going to the morgue in a body bag, pretty much. What is ironic is because the day before yesterday, 24/7 Wall Street published an article written by Douglas A. McIntyre, and it specifically pertains to this Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It talked about Black unemployment rate being 7% higher than the white unemployment rate. And the article stated that the Bureau of Labor Statistics recently released a report and on the employment situation of May of 2023. The report revealed strong figures like 3,339 jobs were added to the economy, to the American economy, and that surpassed expectations. However, the unemployment rates still vary significantly based on gender and race. Notably, the jobless rate for Black individuals was 70% higher than that of white people. Looking at the different demographic categories, the jobless rate for adult women was 3.3%, while it stood at 5.6% for Black people. Among adult men, the rate was 3.5%, and for teenagers, it was 10.3%. Whites held a jobless rate of 3.3%. Asians at 2.9%, and Hispanics at 4.0%. Now I can say the Asians are probably because they do have, most of them are having businesses, especially in the Black community or whatever, and they do practice a little more entrepreneurial endeavors. So that could be, you know, something that's a part of, that's handed down in their culture. This is a very difficult conversation that I had with my co-host recently, but that is something that we definitely can talk about on the table, put on the table to talk about, because right now we have things that are happening in this country where Asian Americans are getting the rights that Black people are fighting for. So it's being overlooked, has passed over us to them. I know these conversations are a lot, but we're at 1 hour 41 minutes so far. So several factors contribute to the higher jobless rates among Black Americans compared to white Americans. Racism in single adult households, where one person must balance the child care and full-time employment are among the primary reasons, according to the Economic Policy Institute. And I can tell you that as a single Black father, that is definitely one of the issues when it comes to jobs. I can tell you, when you get a job, they do not respect that you have children. They want to hold you there late and penalize you if you want to go home on time so that you can make sure you get to your children. They do want to hold you, there are certain events or whatever. Like I worked at a hospital and they wanted me to stay at the hospital during the hurricane. I had to ask the individual that was in charge, like, are you out your mind? Like I got kids at home. And when this hurricane hits, you want me here at the hospital, where my kids are at home. And I'm just like, now there's somebody watching the kids, but there's issues with that or whatnot. They weren't able to drive a car or whatnot or something like that. So I had the only vehicle in the household or whatever. And you want me to be able to just sit here at the hospital while my kids are, 12 miles away or whatever. And tell me how that works. You gonna pay me time? Oh, I know you're gonna pay me time and a half or whatever to work through a hurricane. Oh yeah. And I asked him, I said, what's the plan? What plan do you have here? And that individual, none of them actually in the room could explain to me there was a plan. Later, when I came back, I found out they did have a daycare, but apparently the AC broke in the daycare or whatever. So those kids were in there sweating. Like you weren't even adequately planned out enough to deal with this. So if you got a single father working for you, his priority is going to be that family. He is going to prioritize work, but it ain't coming over the family. Okay. I don't know why that seems to be hard for employers to understand that, but they don't care. They just see you as a number, right? Anyway, the American Progressive reports that the disparity between Black and white jobless rates dates back to 1972, when the Bureau of Labor Statistics started gathering monthly employment data. And as for, now keep in mind, 1972, they started collecting the data and instantly they saw that this was a constant. So there's been no change. There's been no progress, right? Just want people to understand that, okay? Another reason they gave was incarceration, mass incarceration. Here we're talking about some systemic racist issues. But I thought systemic racism didn't exist. Willie Taylor, I thought you said the law wasn't racist. And by the way, they are, but still, what are we talking about here, right? It says mass incarceration plays a significant role in the lower labor force participation rate for African-American men. Then there's educational attainment is another reason, right? Whites tend to graduate from high school and college at a higher rate than Black people. That discussion, my co-host is willing to have that discussion whenever he chooses to, but he can very brief you very well on some of the reasons or the factors involved in that. All right. So experts emphasize that these are reasons that all these reasons are interconnected, forming a very complex set of social challenges for Black Americans that they uniquely face when entering the workforce. It is widely agreed upon that these issues cannot be easily resolved. A study of the 24/7 Wall Street further delves into the problem at the city level, revealing that cities where Black African Americans encounter significant difficulties. Black residents in those metro areas are much less likely to hold a high school diploma or a college degree than white residents. Lower levels of high school attainment can also drive down the wages and make it more difficult to find a job. This is a discussion I talk about all the time with one of my community members. And based on all those factors, the gulf between the Black unemployment and the white unemployment rates are unlikely to change. Now, they gave me a list of the worst states for Black Americans. It was late. I pulled it open. I couldn't even read it and understand it at the time because I was really tired. So I closed it up. I was supposed to review it before I live streamed tonight. Apologize for that. I'm going to go ahead and post this link of the article in the comment section. It talks about the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and so that you can read it yourself. I don't think that I'm just blowing smoke up your, up your tail or whatever. And so you guys can read it yourself. It came out 2 days ago. And finally, it is common knowledge to know that homelessness and crime are closely related. Homeless people are more likely to be negatively involved in the U.S. justice system. Homeless status offenses are most frequently reported, all right, because the homeless are forced to live outside, and it increases their chances for them to receive citations and in some case arrests for low-level offenses. Those low-level offenses such as panhandling, loitering, vagrancy, jumping turnstiles, trespassing, or even sleeping on the park benches. Homeless people are more likely to commit or experience other crimes ranging from assault to robbery. However, it is spotlighted that homeless women and mental illness are especially vulnerable to sexual assault and harassment. Very complex issues here, right? So we can see what that 2018, to 2023, this housing crisis and what it causes. So when we see crime rise, which Wayne obviously said that crime was down, right? But when we see crime rise and understand that, we've been in a housing crisis, and I say 2018 because at that time I was looking for homes or whatever, that homes that weren't even built, especially here in Brevard County. Like, it was very difficult to find a 4-bedroom house. You see what I'm saying? So coming out of the military was kind of difficult. Then I kept getting some realtors that were showing me houses, but I'm looking at houses that are in Titusville where the pipes are rusty. Like, hold on, wait a minute. The city, there's some issues with the city. I'm not going to badmouth the city. I'm just going to say there's some issues with that. The homes have not been renovated. These are old homes that were basically built in the 40s and 50s or whatever. And you're trying to sell this at $250,000? Bro, come off of that. That house is 69 grand at the most. Okay? It's a nice fixer-upper, but I ain't buying it at $250. Then there's issues of availability and then pre-approval, and so that's you dealing with the banks or whatever, and then you might have some discrimination that might happen at the bank. You can get pre-approval, but people don't want to have that conversation. Y'all ain't ready, so at that point or whatever, we're gonna keep moving. All right. Anyone who is familiar with our discussions are aware that I hate using statistics. Okay, I hate to use them to paint a picture, but the individuals who have been convicted of crimes and sent to prison more than once, or there are, according to these statistics, 13 times more at risk to become homeless than citizens of the general public, okay? So those who have been incarcerated only once are 7 times as likely to fall into homelessness. So it's documented that the recidivism increases an individual's likelihood of becoming homeless, right? Remember Chief Connie from the very first Community Demands complained about the recidivism rate, right? I don't know if Wayne Ivey complained about it. I think he did complain about it. Somebody in our community complained about the recidivism rate, okay? I think there's somebody said something about that. But it's becoming clear that homelessness often manifests itself in a cycle. Everybody knows this. Without access to a good paying job, the victims of the homelessness struggle to save money and build financial stability. They are left unable to put money towards savings after first taking care of the immediate needs of food and transportation. They struggle to find stable housing, an inability to find access or inability to access jobs or even attain financial security that is necessary to sustain housing perpetuates the cycle of homelessness. Don't need to preach that, right? The gap between the unemployment and the housing insecurity glares all members in the community in the face. Whether some of us are courageous enough to speak about these interventions intended to break the cycle of homelessness, it just depends upon how altruistic that person chooses to be. Okay? Conversation nobody wanted to have back in 2020. And that means that someone has to be courageous enough to resist the popular groupthink, that endorses the criminalizing of the homeless. Now, it's hard to shift to the popular thought into the considering limitation or considering limiting the police contact and the contact they have with those homeless individuals. Most people blindly support law enforcement. That Titusville crime group posted about someone being homeless. And I remember I seen everybody, I'm very thankful everybody stood up for that homeless person, whoever that homeless person was. And they were like, this really doesn't need to be in here or whatever. We understand that there's, it's a low level crime, but come on, man. Like, have a heart, be real. Titusville hasn't even developed the housing situation. I'm just now seeing corners that were woods for 40 years, 40. All right. Yeah. 40 years. And now all of a sudden they have a house there, and it's like they could have built a house there years ago. Why didn't they do it? Right now, the housing market is high. So, but before in 2008, they didn't want to put that home there, right? So anyways, homelessness is a very important issue to our country. It's a very important issue to our county because Black African Americans and people of color experience homelessness at higher rates than white Americans. That's just a fact, okay? This can be attributed to the long history of structural racism and the wealth inequity, as well as denied rights and social economic opportunities. Now, African Americans, who represent 13% of the general population, account for 39% of the people experiencing homelessness and more than 50% of the homeless families with children, okay? Now, I want to make note that everybody understands, we know that crime rates tend to rise when the warm summer months, and the violent crime violent crime, I should state, because when we talk about during the winter months, crimes associated with the porch pirates, that stuff gets to be the one that's reported on the news mostly, and that's at an all-time high, right? So we have to understand the context of how crime works. And because those in those winter months, it's not that I think that the crime increases. It's maybe just that the fact that the opportunities to commit the crime increases. So everybody's trying to get all involved in the shipping wars that happen around the holidays, and that's all those holidays are associated with Christmas and other holidays or whatever. The gifts are at the center of all those celebrations, okay? And so when people are purchasing more and more products in preparation to all those holidays, the criminal, who is really just an opportunist, is looking for you to continue making all those Amazon, FedEx, UPS, and United States Postal Service deliveries to your doorstep, all right? And they know that high value dollar items and gifts are worth the risk, all right? That they're worth the risk for a porch pirate. So we do have to understand that there are nuances to crime rising in the summer months, and we need to understand that there are going to be responses to elevated violent crime rates by the police departments and the sheriff's office in accordance to those assigned areas. And if you have not been paying attention, there have been a string of shootings that have been occurring here in Melbourne. I think I already showed you that in the video. JD Gallup just recently wrote about 2 shootings that happened recently. One that resulted in a 28-year-old male being charged with aggravated battery with a deadly weapon. I think that was the one that involved a teenager and some kids. And it's probably, why child neglect was also charged in that shooting. And then there was another shooting that occurred in South Melbourne. I think that was where a team might have been involved in that one also, because JD Gallup reported that there was an 18-year-old that was taken to Holmes Regional, and he was listed in critical condition. Now, I don't know if that one was the one my daughter was talking about individually, or if that was the one that was associated with the downtown shooting, whatever. So whether that's 2, 3 shootings or whatever, it don't matter. All right. What's supposed to matter is that, we're just a month and a half away from this new permitless carry law that's going to be instituted. And I believe that it's going to be a catalyst for a lot of stop and frisk action, a lot of questionable searches, accusations, and assumptions that are based on the potential ability to be able to carry a firearm. And a catalyst coupled with the last string of shootings that we just had is setting the stage again. It's creating the environment for a very difficult summer. Okay, that's my message tonight, or whatever. So, Black fathers who are responsible for young men in our communities, we have to let our youth know. Okay, white fathers, you can let your children know too. But I'm speaking to, as a Black father, I'm speaking to other Black fathers. We have to let our youth know that this is not the kind of setting that's favorable for them. It's not going to be favorable for them to be hanging out with the wrong crowd. All right. This summer, that kind of crowd will be encouraging them to potentially engage in irresponsible gunplay. And this is important that we need to head off, before it starts happening. Now, mark my words, I'm telling you, we're looking at the hierarchy of needs. We see, some of these issues or whatever, and where they're headed. And it's important that we understand this. It's important that we understand what's about to happen. It's going to be a rise. It's going to be a tick. And we need to understand all this. I know that the messages are always out there leaning against us Black fathers. And we as Black fathers, we get accused and take the blame for the worst things that happen in these communities. And even though they may not have the amount of, we may not have the amount of power that they accuse us of misusing, and nonetheless, we usually bear the blame. That's just how it is right now. So let's just try to, see if we can take our personal responsibility to curb it where it begins. And I can tell you that the media pundits and the political correspondents have already started to shift gears back into that pre-1990s when it comes to the negative narratives that perpetuate racism. And when we've seen that the last 5 years, they've been shifting their message. If you've not been paying attention, you need to know, what the Republican Party and the Democratic Party have decided to do because of their recent failures politically, especially in the media. So they need to change up the messaging. So like I said, we are getting back to that, that kind of environment where, hands up, don't shoot and all this other stuff. And they call BLM terrorists or whatever and stuff. Just recently heard that BLM went bankrupt and everything else or whatever, something's going on. But I'm just telling you, it's a cycle happening. Okay, we got to be prepared. We got to be ready for this. All right, because no excuses. All right, they're implementing strategies. You're seeing this. This is why Don Lemon got fired, because what did the one guy, Vivek Ramaswamy, that garbage behind dude, got on CNN and was arguing with Don Lemon, and Don Lemon was right. Not talking about when he made the comments about the woman. He made the comments or whatever about the guy, Vivek Ramaswamy, like overlooking Reconstruction. And I can willingly bet and tell you whatever, he ain't dumb. He doing that on purpose, because when we look at the Reconstruction era, we're going to see the responsibility. Okay. I'm gonna close out now. I'm gonna show a video, and it's gonna close it out or whatever. There are some books I wanted to, a message I want to state, but I'll push that message off, and I want to show some books. I want to highlight some books and talk about Michelle Davis's Essence of Knowledge bookstore. But I'll probably just do a separate one, and maybe come on next week or whatever and just do a light one. But I do want to say this, okay? It's just supposed to be like a gift if anybody participated and they want to talk about a black on black crime conversation. So we're gonna get to it. Let me see if I can. We'll cover that later. There's some books I'm gonna suggest you guys go out and purchase and go out and get, and give you an area where you probably can purchase those books. It's probably good. I'm even sure that I got to talk to Michelle and see if she can actually order that book for you. All right. So what I will do is I will show this, since we were talking about crime, and I know that we addressed almost every community demand that was asked of me, except for the actual question of black on black crime. So I'll give you a preview. Something very simple just happened recently. There was a May 4th lecture that a individual by the name of Dr. Darity, okay, Dr. William Sandy Darity Jr. He's a professor. I'll tell you about him in a second. We'll watch the video, but he was in a meeting or in a lecture, and at the portion of the lecture where they do the questions and answers, he was asked by an individual who decided to, well, it was kind of weird because they kind of built up to a point where he was wrong, and somebody pointed out that he was wrong about one little thing about an answer. And I guess this guy felt that it was time to him to ask this question, and he brought up the question on black crime, but he brought it up in a weird way that was kind of palatable for the intellectual crowd. And this was right after he was talking about the same issues that we were talking about tonight, white workers being insulated by black unemployment, and him not understanding or not knowing, it'd be unknown for him to predict the outcome of a racially unified group of workers that work to fix a black unemployment rate. So he was having that discussion. So you can tell it was at that kind of level, intellectual level. And then this individual came up and asked him a question. Pay attention.
Thanks for coming today. Are there any trends within the black community, such as higher crime rates or higher illegitimacy rates, that could explain their position vis-a-vis whites? And can those be explained by some dominant social group?
No.
No to the first one, or
no to both.
So there's no.
I mean, there's a propagandistic mechanism that's afloat about, black illegitimacy and black criminality.
I guess it depends on what kind of crime you have in mind. If we think about which community in the United States has the highest degree of history of violence, that's unquestionably white Americans. Unquestionably. I mean, I'm not sure if you're aware of the 100 massacres that were conducted between the end of the Civil War and World War II that were directed against black communities throughout the United States, in which thousands of blacks were killed and the white terrorists appropriated black-owned property. So there's no segment of the population that has a greater history of violence than white Americans. So when you talk about these kinds of matters to me, you're actually mouthing a set of propagandistic claims that are made on the right in the United States, and they do not have a foundation in fact.
All right, so,
sorry, we need to move on with the last two.
Give me a second. I want to move this down real quick and get to the heart of this. So if you didn't hear what he was asking, I want to get this on the screen because what he was trying to do was he was trying to scapegoat black people. And we talked about this issue. Get this on the screen. What did I say about scapegoating? What did I say about a scapegoat? He asked, thanks for coming today. He was very cordial. He said, thanks for coming today, because he knew what he was about to do. He said, are there any trends within the, so it's an assumption, are there any trends within the black community, such as higher crime rates or higher legitimacy rates that could explain your position vis-a-vis whites? And can you explain this via the dominant social group? Oh, he was trying it. He was trying it. He was trying to get into the black on black crime discussion, the black on black crime narrative. All right. And that's one of the first, it deals with one of the first concepts that I ever addressed about when I first live streamed, and that was about black inferiority. The black inferiority is a theory that white supremacists continue to try to legitimize through the moving the goalposts for those who challenge the theory's legitimacy. The black inferiority is a myth that is a belief that stereotypes of the black people are unintelligent, lazy, and therefore predisposed to conditions of racial inferiority to all other races, especially races of European descent. That is quite common for those who believe in the veracity of black inferiority to feel threatened about this theory not being legitimate or not being absolutely legitimate when they encounter an intelligent black person such as Dr. Darity, okay? And they send that, you know, black intelligent person off on a like a journey or some kind of task to facilitate, or they send them off to facilitate some type of task that's going to provide evidence or proof that the theory of black inferiority is indeed legitimate. And in this situation is what you saw. It is very common form of inquiring about the black on black crime narrative. This is what I hear when you guys ask me about that, okay? It's very interesting when I came across that post or whatever. But he was explaining exactly the ideas, exactly the way I wanted to explain this community. And there was a time I did attend a community event at the Titusville Police Department, and a high-ranking official was speaking to the public, and I had to step up in a nutshell and say, you know, exactly what Dr. Darity just said, and reply to the, you know, replied to that individual who was inquisiting there in the audience. I had even spoken and mentioned the term that it was a false narrative. And Dr. Darity says it was propaganda, right? Same thing. But he said it was propaganda created by white supremacists. And like I said, that it was a narrative created by white supremacists to legitimize black inferiority. Now, I didn't go into great detail about, you know, facts, you know, concerning the Reconstruction era, and I will. But like I said, I was trying to go to the way of massacres. But Dr. Darity did that when he framed the detailed time period of the Reconstruction era, and he talked about 100 massacres that were conducted between the Civil War era and the World War II. That's just a small time period, right? You know, he highlighted the most critical, important pieces of intelligence associated with the conversations in regard to race relations in America today. And in that time period, after emancipation, white supremacists set out to physically and psychologically disenfranchise African American descendants in America. And they are African descendants in America, excuse me. And they did this with a very cunningly by using racism against African Americans while simultaneously using classism to fool white Americans of European descent or influence a greater degree of control by using the appearance of whiteness or common interests to the white elite. Okay, this kept it kept them participating and kept them ignorant to the totality of the purpose of white supremacy and keeping white working class people in a position to fail at the same time, actually it caused them to fail to realize that their interests weren't even common, that they had some interests common with the Black community, but it kept them at a position to fail or whatever, but kind of the position to blame Black people for it. You know what I'm saying? This is part of one of some of the things when it comes to talk about racism, what it truly is. That white supremacist propaganda, it tricks white people into believing that racism supports their collective economic interests. And this is what the conversation that he was having before he got asked about that. So I know that that's very hard for everybody to believe. And trust me, this is going to come back up. We talk about Black on Black crime. I just want to give you a look at, a preview into the conversation, because I know that was a very big community demand. I just wanted to address that and say, here we go again, see how they're scapegoating. So either way, I just wanted to be able to, kind of highlight that and show you, that these are all the things that you asked about. So I addressed all your community demands up to this point. We're going to try to take it easy for the next couple of weeks. It's my hope that everybody, the viewing audience can observe that we're just moving through this step-by-step process. Let me get this off the screen. It is my hope that everybody sees that we're trying to move through this step-by-step process. Legitimately, we're trying to move through it. And we are, trying to be authentic in a regard to figuring out how we're going to acknowledge some of these needs of the community. And that the vital questions that we ask to open the door to many resolutions, or that it's going to open the door to many resolutions. But I just want to thank everybody, for contributing tonight. We've reached a time where I want to conclude this because we were over the 2-hour time limit. But I want to conclude this particular discussion. I'd like to thank my viewers for their contributions and sharing the knowledge that they shared, especially with all the information that I tried to provide last week and tonight. I truly appreciate all your efforts. As always, I as the host of this show, wish you, the viewing audience, power and truth. I wish you authentic love, peace of mind, and may the Most High guide your path